I love reading. I fell into it when I was 14 and my mother passed to me The World According to Garp, which is a book from John Irvin, and since then this reading bug has always been with me. But there are so many good books out there. Realistically, there are only about 30 to 50 books that I can read a year, but there's about 3 million books which are published worldwide every year. But I have found a way to actually read a book a day. So if you want to know about my secret, stay tuned. My name is Greg Angelbert. I'm a life and personal finance coach. My life purpose is to help people learn to live with personal agency. I share what I know about coaching and personal finance on a cup of coffee to help you live a life of personal agency with purpose and building your wealth. Why do we need to read more in the first place? Let's look at a few reasons for that. The first one is, well, there's more and more knowledge in the world today. There's more and more things that we need to actually keep up with if we want to be able to keep this capacity to earn a living for ourselves. And reading plays a key role in this. Also, reading more helps you broaden your perspective on a variety of topics. It can break thought patterns that you've had in your life for a very long time and that have been limiting you without you necessarily knowing about it. And it also helps create those haha moments where you discover something new, take a different perspective on your life and start to change. You can also get access to more verified facts through books because most of the time books are quite well researched and you can actually see where the research is coming from compared to what we look at on social media or just on TV. And finally, it can give you more focus and attention. Reading demands our deep attention, so it allows us to actually cut off everything around compared to, again, social media and other places, which makes our attention span very, very small. So how do I read a book a day? Well, actually, what I do is I read or listen to audio summaries or written summaries of books, which usually takes 15 to 30 minutes for each book. Now, I already hear people up in arms and saying, this is not reading, you are actually cheating, and this is not what is supposed to happen with books, you need to read them entirely. How dare you? Well, I used to think the same way, and to be honest, that was quite snobbish of me, and I think it was not very efficient. Let's do the calculation. So there are about 3 million books published every year in variety of language, but imagine that you can read a lot of them. If you take 0.1% of those books and you say they are great books that I want to read, so that's just 0.1%, that's 3,000 books, which is impossible to go through 1 year. Even if you say it's 0.01%, it's going to be 300 books per year. And that's not counting all the other books which have been published in the past, and obviously there are many, many great books to read. So that's okay, let's take the snobism and put it aside and actually try to be a bit more efficient in terms of what we can get access to and all the breadth, variety of topics and books that we can do if we actually read some summaries of books versus reading full books all the time. Reading a book a day works for certain type of books, not for all of them, and the primary book style that you want to have is non-fiction, and it's a very broad term. Here you can think about all sorts of self-help books, general knowledge books, biographies, historical narratives, philosophy or religion books, etc., etc. The reason is that for those books, key ideas and examples are what the content is all about. It's not about long narratives to take you on a journey. For instance, I'm a big fan of science fiction, okay, so I read a lot of books about science fiction. I would never read a summary of a science fiction book. I want to be taken on the journey forever. I actually want the book to never end. A second reason for why particularly self-help books can benefit from reading summaries is the fact that they overlap a lot. If you take any idea, for instance, the concept of having a life purpose, in the first book you read about this topic, you will probably actually learn quite a lot. On the second book, you will learn something new, but you will also see that a lot of those ideas are also coming from the first book. And on the third book, there will be even more overlap, and so on and so forth. And self-help books are actually creating new ideas based on the ideas of many other self-help books. So you get the idea about how much overlap there is there. So I read a lot of self-help books in my life, and I would say that nowadays, any one book that I pick has roughly 80% of content that I've read somewhere else before. So that means only 20% of novel ideas that you really want to be focused on. Frankly, also, there are a lot of books out there where you feel that the editors, the authors, want to actually give you pages for money instead of content for money, and so they tend to actually add a lot of narrative when they could really summarize it. And what happens if you read a summary of a book and you say, well, those ideas are really novel, there's a lot of that I'm learning here, is that you might want to actually say, okay, well, I'm going to read the full book because it's really interesting. I've done that. And, the other way around. So you end up with actually reading a really good book completely, but a few years later you might come back and actually read the summary of the book. You're liking this video so far? Then I would appreciate if you would actually smash the like button and also put the notifications on and subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more about content like this. Also check out the other videos in the description, which are from other famous YouTube channels exactly about the topic of reading. It's important for you to actually not only hear from me, but also from other influential people around. And how do you actually read a book a day or read more? The first tip is really to find a time that suits you. Sometimes that you feel that you'll be able to actually be more focused on the task of reading. And it's not very long. As I said, it might be 15 minutes, maximum 30 minutes of your time in a day. And think about having the environment around you the best as possible for actually making it happen. So for you, it might be that you want to listen to that during a commute. You might be able to read more during the morning for breakfast, or you might decide that before bed is the right time. Or if you have a time budget and something which is dedicated to learning every week, then you can use that portion of time for reading, because reading is learning. Depending on how you motivate yourself, you can also use such things like, okay, you give yourself a reward if you read X number of books per month. Or on the contrary, you can decide to actually give yourself a pain, which is to say, well, okay, if I don't read all the books that I want to read, then I'm going to cut on Netflix, video games, whatever that is using your time that you can then spend more time on reading. Motivation is also very much about working with other people on something that is important for you and for them. So find someone who is also interested in reading more, work with them on a schedule every week where you're going to check on each other and say, hey, how have you been doing on your reading this week? And be understanding to each other. It's a question of listening to what went well, what did not go well. There's no judgment involved. It's just about helping each other to motivate each other. Finally, have the right tool. You can find different type of resources about reading summaries of books on internet or apps. Personally, I use an app which is called Blinkist, and it really works for me. They have summaries of really a wide range of books. They have also audio versions of those books, so you can do weather audio reading. They give you suggestions based on what you've read before and also on novelty topics that pop up every week. And from a technology standpoint, I use my phone to read the blinks, as they are called. That you can do whether with a phone, whether you're doing it with your tablet or your PC. There's many different tools that you can use to do that. Now it's time to take action. Reading a book is fine, so what is even better is to really get the book under your skin. So it's to find the key ideas that really matter to you and absorb them, make them part of you, of the living you. For instance, do not hesitate to highlight any part of the book that is important for you, so you can always come back to that later. Blinkist, for instance, allow you to do that and also to be able to read those parts separately, so you have a bit of a summary of the summary. I actually write summaries of my summaries. I know that sounds a little bit crazy. I do that every day and actually post them on LinkedIn every day, so that's an accountability towards myself to do that, and doing the summary actually makes me really think about the content. And here I always focus on also getting a key idea that I want to remember, something which is, if I keep just one thing out of the book, what would it be? And the most important part is, what are you going to do with these key ideas that you have found in this book? How would you use it in your life? Who would you want to share it with? What are the really key actions that you might take that will have an impact on your life or the life of people around you? And sometimes it might not be much more than just saying, I just want to remember this idea. I want to come back to it as part of my process of learning key ideas in my life. In the spirit of personal agency, so think about right now about an action that you would be ready to take based on watching this video about reading more. What are you ready to do on this topic about reading more? Pause now and have a think about it. Reading has changed my life, and being able to read even faster has changed my life even faster now. Since I've started to read a book a day, there's so many more ideas coming to my mind, so many more things that I want to know and discover, and so many possibilities, because once you know you can read a book a day, you can access many more topics. If you're interested in knowing what are the books that I've read since the beginning of the year, for instance, go check out the links down there. There's a list of all those books that I've read, and also the summaries that I put on my LinkedIn post. There's also a link for that. I hope this video about my one book a day reading habit has been useful and inspirational to you, and I will see you next week to talk more about life and money coaching.